There was a time when life moved slower, and if you grew up in the 1970s, you can still feel the warmth of those days lingering at the edges of your memory. Summer sunlight had a golden hue back then, as if the whole world had been painted in soft Kodachrome tones that glowed from the inside out. Streets were quieter, somehow safer, with the hum of a distant lawnmower drifting through the air and the faint crackle of an AM radio playing a song you knew by heart. It was a world where the front door creaked open in the morning and didn't close again until the sun dipped behind the trees. A world where kids disappeared on bicycles without helmets or maps, guided only by curiosity and the unwritten rules of childhood. And maybe that's why those memories feel so alive, because we lived every second of them with our whole hearts. If you grew up in the 70s, you know the sound of a screen door slamming behind you. That perfect combination of freedom and invitation. You know how the wooden porch steps felt under your bare feet, still cool from the night before. You remember the smell of someone's car warming up in the driveway, the rough texture of the sidewalk under your sneakers, the way the air was filled with the chatter of neighborhood kids long before noon. And somewhere in that background noise, the radio was always playing Fleetwood Mac, Elton John, the Eagles, Carole King, each song like a thread tying you back to a time when music wasn't just heard, but felt. Mornings in the 70s had their own rhythm. You'd wake to sunlight streaming through patterned curtains, casting shapes across your bedroom walls. Your mom might be downstairs making coffee, the smell drifting through the house like a quiet signal that the day had begun. Maybe there was toast, or cereal, or pancakes if it was a weekend. Your dad might be sitting at the kitchen table, reading the morning paper, folding each page with a gentle crackle. Life felt simple without feeling empty. It felt quiet without feeling dull. And as you sat there with your cereal spoon tapping the bowl, the world outside was waiting, wide, warm, and yours. If this journey brings back memories, consider subscribing for more stories like this, because sometimes all we need is a reminder of the world we once knew. Stepping outside was like stepping into possibility. The sun wasn't just bright, it was warm in a way that wrapped around you, sinking into your skin, turning everything into a scene straight out of an old family photograph. The sidewalks shimmered in the heat, the neighbor's dog barked at passing bicycles, and somewhere a kid was dragging a basketball across the driveway. You didn't need a phone to find your friends, you just rode until you did. Maybe they were building ramps behind the grocery store, stacking plywood on bricks and daring each other to jump. Maybe they were at the park, swinging so high they swore they could see the whole world from the top. Or maybe they were just sitting on the curb, talking about nothing and everything at once. That was the magic of it. No schedule, no plan, just the soft unfolding of a day that belonged entirely to you. The colors of that decade still live in your mind. The mustard yellows, the burnt oranges, the avocado greens that filled every kitchen, the patterned couches that swallowed you whole, the shag carpets warm beneath your knees, the heavy drapes that muffled the afternoon light. Every home had a console TV that clicked when you changed the channel, a radio with a silver antenna that picked up stations full of static and wonder, and maybe a beanbag chair that smelled faintly of vinyl and childhood. It was a world of textures, real ones, physical ones, before everything became smooth, digital and cold. Afternoons drifted with the gentle hum of ordinary life. Moms hanging laundry on the line, shirts swaying in the breeze like soft flags of another time. Dads tinkering with cars and driveways, wiping their hands on old rags and calling out for someone to bring them a wrench. Kids trading baseball cards or flipping through comic books until the ink smudged their fingers. The sound of the ice cream truck rolling slowly down the street. The ring of a telephone from inside the house, its cord stretched across the kitchen floor by whoever answered first. These were the moments that stitched themselves into memory. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they were real, honest pieces of a life lived with presence, not distraction. The 1970s had a heartbeat, and you could feel it in the way time lingered. You waited for photos to develop, shows to come on, letters to arrive. And in that waiting, something beautiful took shape. Patience, anticipation, appreciation. Those were the quiet teachers of childhood, shaping who we became long before we ever realized it. You didn't document life, you lived it. And maybe that's why those days still stay with us, because they weren't measured in notifications or likes, but in laughter, sunlight, and the simple truth of being alive in a world that moved like a slow, familiar song. As the day stretched into the warm glow of afternoon, the world of the 1970s settled into a rhythm that felt almost musical. You could hear it in the steady hum of cicadas, the soft thump of a screen door swinging shut, the laughter of kids drifting from one end of the block to the other. Life back then wasn't something you rushed through, it was something you stepped into, slowly, like the warmth of a sun-soaked porch. You felt it on your skin, in your chest, even in the quiet moments when nothing much was happening at all. Maybe that's why those afternoons feel so vivid in your memory. They unfolded gently, giving you time to notice the world instead of running past it. Inside the houses, the air was filled with the smells of the decade. Pot roast simmering in a crock-pot, coffee brewing on the counter, lemon-scented pledge lingering in the living room after a morning of chores. Kitchens were the heart of the home, all wood cabinets, harvest gold appliances, and the steady tick of a wall clock marking the slow movement of time. Mothers scribbled grocery lists on yellow notepads, flipping through coupon books with corners worn soft from use. Phones clung to the wall with cords that stretched across the room, twisting like vines as kids pulled them tight to whisper secrets no one else could hear. The world might have been outside, but the house, warm, cluttered, lived in, was where everything truly belonged. And then there was the television, sitting like a grand piece of furniture in the living room. It didn't just show programs. It set the tone of the evening, the rich click of the channel dial, the soft fizz of static, the warm glow of the picture tube as it blinked awake. These were the small, hypnotic rituals of home. You didn't have 1,000 channels fighting for your attention, you had just a handful, and somehow, that was enough. Every show felt like an event, something you planned for, something you didn't dare miss. Whether it was the Brady Bunch, M*A*S*H, Happy Days, or your local news at 6, the TV brought the world to you in small, comforting doses. Neighborhoods, too, carried their own personality, each block a little universe of routine and familiarity. You knew who left for work early, who watered their lawn twice a day, who had the best swing set, and which house handed out the good candy on Halloween. Neighbors didn't just wave, they lingered. They talked over fences, shared tools, swapped recipes, and borrowed cups of sugar without thinking twice. There was trust woven into the sidewalks, into the front porches, into the way people looked out for one another. If a bike sat abandoned on the lawn, no one worried. They knew the kid who owned it would be back before dinner. Afternoons often meant errands with your parents, piling into the family car, a big, rumbling station wagon with wood paneling on the sides and seats that smelled like sun-heated vinyl. You'd roll the windows down and feel the wind whip through your hair as the radio played songs that are still part of you today. At the grocery store, the floors were glossy, the lights bright, and everything felt like it existed just to be discovered. You wandered the aisles, begging for cereal with cartoons on the box or candy bars that cost a quarter. Cashiers knew your family by name. Bags were paper, sturdy and warm from the heat of fresh bread. Shopping wasn't rushed. Nothing was rushed. Even waiting in line had its own charm. You'd study the gum racks, flip through comic books, or simply stare at the colorful packaging of items stacked neatly on the shelves. The world felt full, tangible, touchable. Every object had weight. Every experience had texture. You weren't surrounded by digital noise. You were surrounded by life. And when the weekends came, the pace shifted in the most wonderful way. Saturdays smelled like cut grass and gasoline as fathers mowed lawns in long straight lines, carefully turning corners as if they were shaping the world itself. Kids ran through sprinklers, their laughter bright against the heat of the day. Cars were washed in driveways with hoses and buckets of sudsy water, radio music drifting from open windows. The entire neighborhood felt alive, connected by routine, community, and the steady beat of a simpler time. If these moments resonate with your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more timeless memories, because some stories deserve to be remembered again. Evenings carried a kind of magic that's hard to explain now. As the sun dipped low, the golden light stretched across rooftops and sidewalks, softening the world in a way that made everything feel possible. Families gathered around dinner tables set with mismatched plates and glasses clinking softly as stories of the day were shared. There were no buzzing phones, no screens stealing glances, just the hum of togetherness, the sound of forks against plates, the faint music of a radio playing somewhere in another room. After dinner, the world outside cooled, and the night air carried the smell of charcoal from lingering backyard barbecues. Kids played tag under streetlights that buzzed faintly as moths circled their warm glow. Someone down the street might be tuning a car engine, the metallic clinks echoing into the dusk. Dogs barked, parents chatted on porches, windows glowed softly as televisions flickered behind curtains. The world was quiet but alive, peaceful but full. And when you finally went inside for the night, brushing your teeth in a bathroom lit by a soft yellow bulb, you felt a kind of contentment that's hard to replicate now. You fell asleep to the sound of a box fan humming in the window or the croak of frogs outside, knowing that tomorrow would unfold with the same gentle rhythm, the same sunlight, the same sidewalks, the same warm familiarity that wrapped around you like a memory you didn't yet know you'd spend your whole life holding on to. As the 1970s unfolded across America, the decade revealed itself not just as a period of time, but as a feeling, a warm, unhurried rhythm that pulsed through everyday life. You could sense it in the music that drifted from living rooms and car radios, in the glow of neon lights at the local diner, in the laughter spilling out of bowling alleys and roller rinks on Friday nights. The world felt young then, hungry for possibility, shaped by voices that dared to dream and rhythms that carved their way into the soul. If you grew up in that era, you remember how everything, absolutely everything, had its own soundtrack. Music wasn't just part of life, it was life. Vinyl records spun slowly on turntables. The soft crackle before the first note starting to play felt almost sacred. You'd sit cross-legged on the shag carpet, studying the album cover like it was a window into another universe. Fleetwood Mac, John Denver, ABBA, the Eagles, Queen. Each song felt like it belonged to you. Radios in diners played softly beneath the clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversations, while teenagers carried portable cassette players with tangled earphone cords, rewinding songs with a pencil because they never wanted the moment to end. Music didn't fill silence, it accompanied life. The streets had their own rhythm too, a mix of engines warming up, screen doors opening, and kids shouting from driveways. Cars were bigger, bolder, with gleaming chrome bumpers and wide bench seats. A road trip felt like an adventure, even if you were just headed to the next town. You de-rolled the windows down and let the wind rush through the car as the radio played something bright and endless. Families piled into station wagons, kids sitting in the back seat without seatbelts, pointing at passing trucks on long stretches of open road. Life felt like motion, slow but steady, always humming forward. And then there were the gathering places, the places where community lived. Roller rinks with disco lights spinning across polished floors, teenagers weaving in and out, holding hands, laughing when they lost their balance. Bowling alleys that smelled faintly of popcorn and shoe spray, where families gathered on Saturday nights, keeping score with dull pencils on thin sheets of paper. Malls with their glossy floors and mirrored columns, record shops and bookstores tucked into corners, fountains bubbling softly as shoppers wandered past window displays filled with the colors of the decade. These weren't just places, they were memories waiting to be made. America in the 70s also carried a certain tenderness, a kind of everyday closeness that's nearly impossible to recreate now. People talked to each other face to face, eye to eye. You greeted your mailman by name, chatted with the grocer, sat beside strangers at community events, and ended the night feeling like old friends. Conversation wasn't rushed or distracted. It flowed slowly, like the warmth of a cup of coffee shared across a diner counter. People listened, really listened, because there was nothing pulling their attention away. At school, kids passed handwritten notes folded into little squares, hoping teachers wouldn't catch them. Classrooms smelled of chalk and paper, and overhead projectors hummed softly as teachers placed transparent slides on warm glass. You lined up for recess, ran to the playground, climbed metal jungle gyms that baked in the summer heat. The bell rang, you ran back inside, cheeks flushed, shirts untucked, hearts full. Teenagers cruised through town in their cars, stereo blaring, windows open to the night air. They gathered in parking lots beneath buzzing streetlights, talking for hours about nothing and everything. First love bloomed in the most ordinary places: behind the gym after school, near the lockers, at a drive-in movie where the film flickered across car windshields like a dream barely hanging on. Even heartbreak felt different then, quieter, gentler, softened by time and distance in a world that didn't move quite so fast. Families had their routines, those small rituals that stitched the days together. Dinner was served at the table, not in front of a screen. Someone set the silverware, someone poured the drinks, someone turned the radio down just enough so everyone could hear one another. Conversations didn't need to be deep to matter. What counted was being there, the soft hum of presence weaving through every night. Television offered its own comfort. When the news came on at 6, anchors delivered their words slowly, with a calm certainty that made the world feel steady even when it wasn't. Afterward came the sitcoms and shows that shaped an entire generation's imagination. The Mary Tyler Moore Show, All in the Family, The Waltons, Sanford and Son. Families watched together, laughed together, shared the same glow of the screen reflected in their eyes. There was no rewinding, no pausing. You watched life unfold in real time, and maybe that's why it stayed with you. And through it all, the decade carried a gentle quiet, a space to breathe, to think, to feel. Nights stretched long and soft. The sky seemed darker, the stars brighter, the world outside humming with the sounds of cricket and distant traffic. You might sit on the porch steps, knees pulled to your chest, listening to your parents talk inside, or your siblings laugh from the next room. You might have stared at the moon, wondering what the future held, not knowing how quickly things would change. But even now, decades later, those moments haven't left you. They live in the way an old song stops you in your tracks, in the way a certain smell can carry you back instantly, in the warmth you feel when a memory returns without warning. The 1970s didn't just shape a generation, they shaped the heart. There's a moment, somewhere deep in memory, when the world of the 1970s still lives exactly as it was. You can almost see it if you close your eyes long enough, that warm, golden light falling across a quiet suburban street, the air carrying the smell of summer grass and something cooking in a neighbor's kitchen. Time seemed to linger back then, moving with a softness that wrapped itself around your days like a familiar blanket. If you grew up in that era, you still carry fragments of it inside you, the pieces of a world that no longer exists but somehow never truly disappeared. Maybe it comes back to you when an old song plays in the background at a grocery store, or when you walk past a house with a porch light glowing softly at dusk. Maybe it's the sound of children laughing somewhere far away, or the sight of a bicycle left on the lawn, or the clatter of dishes from inside a busy kitchen. These details, small, ordinary, unremarkable, become extraordinary when they're tied to a time when life felt slower, when the world felt more human, when the quiet mattered, and you remember the way evenings unfolded, unhurried and peaceful. The dinner table cleared, the kitchen darkened, The living room glowing in the flicker of a television set humming softly in the corner. Parents settling into their favorite chairs. Kids lying on the carpet with their chins resting in their hands. The house felt safe, wrapped in a kind of comforting stillness. Outside, the streetlight buzzed and flickered, insects dancing around its warm circle of light. The world wasn't silent, but it wasn't loud either. It breathed, gently, like the steady rhythm of a heart at rest. If these moments resonate with your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more timeless memories, because stories like these keep the past alive. Looking back now, it's easy to realize that the 1970s were never about perfection. They were about presence, about showing up, about living inside the moment instead of rushing past it. Every memory feels framed in soft light. The nights spent lying in the back seat during long drives watching telephone poles blur against the fading sky. The afternoons spent waiting for your favorite show to come on. The way the world felt bigger and smaller all at once. You didn't need anything more than what you had: a bike, a front yard, a few good friends, and a whole world of imagination stretching endlessly in front of you. People were closer then, tied together by rituals that grounded the days. A knock on the door wasn't unexpected, it was welcome. Friends dropped by unannounced. Neighbors invited each other over without a second thought. And every gathering had its own soundtrack of laughter and clinking glasses. There was a warmth in the way people cared, a simplicity in the way they connected. You didn't send messages, you showed up. You didn't double-tap a screen, you looked someone in the eyes. And because of that, every connection felt deeper, sturdier, made of something real. Even time itself seemed different. Long summer nights felt endless, stretching like golden threads woven through the fabric of your childhood. You played until the sky turned violet, until the fireflies began to dance in the dark, until someone's mother called out from a porch. You didn't worry about the next day. You didn't measure your worth in tasks completed or notifications received. You just lived fully, quietly, beautifully. And maybe that's why the memories glow so brightly now, even decades later. Because they were made without the noise of the world we know today. They were built on touch, on sound, on presence, on the texture of a real moment held long enough to become a story you detail for the rest of your life. The world has changed, we all know that. The pace has quickened, the noise has grown louder, and the quiet corners of life feel harder to find. But nostalgia isn't about wishing to go back. It's about remembering what shaped you, what softened you, what made you who you are. The 1970s planted something in the people who lived through them: a slowness, a gratitude, a quiet strength that still surfaces when the world feels overwhelming. Because deep down, you still remember what it felt like to sit on a sunlit porch, listening to the distant sound of a radio drifting through the air. You remember the way the sky looked just before the streetlights flickered on. You remember the sense of being safe, of being part of something warm and familiar. Those moments didn't fade. They rooted themselves inside you, waiting for the right sound, the right scent, the right memory to bring them back. And maybe that's why we hold on to these stories, not to escape the present, but to carry forward the parts of the past that made life feel whole. The patience, the presence, the humanity, the belief that even small moments can be beautiful if you're willing to slow down enough to feel them. In the end, the 1970s weren't just a decade, they were a heartbeat, a soft, steady pulse that still echoes inside the people who lived through it. And if you listen closely enough, you can still hear it. The laughter, the music, the warmth of a world that moved slower, shined brighter, and felt just a little more like home. If these memories brought you back, even for a moment, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes remembering is the most beautiful journey of all.